Going and gone. That's Barack Obama and Fidel Castro, and good riddance to them both. I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is The Right Angle on two lefties who are way past their sell-by dates. I want to talk first, guys, about Castro. Here's a left-wing revolutionary who persecuted Cuba's artists, gays, and blacks, who jailed, tortured, and executed dissenters, who rented out the Cuban army to help protect oil interests in Angola, who helped keep alive the brutal and incompetent Chavez regime in Venezuela, who helped to bring even more war and poverty to Central America, hardly afford it, who turned his island into a base for Soviet nuclear missiles aimed at American cities, who created the spark which nearly lit off World War III, who sent millions of his own people on a makeshift raft, risking life and limb to escape his prison island, who lived in unparalleled luxury after impoverishing what was once the wealthiest nation in the Caribbean, who stole $1 billion while complaining about greed, who turned over control of 60% of his country's economy to the armed forces, whose secret police kept a population in terror, and who gave the world hope when he overthrew the Batista regime, only to put into place a far worse communist tyranny, a tyranny he plans to continue long past his own death by passing absolute power down to his brother 10 years ago, and perhaps soon to his nephew, making the world's second dynastic communist hellhole after that tourist paradise, North Korea. And yet, when Castro died, he received heaps of praise from left-wing leaders around the world, and even in the supposedly freedom-loving American press. Even Barack Obama released a statement so bland, so milquetoast, that it was a virtual whitewash of Castro's decades of crimes and atrocities. Scott, why can't the left let go of Fidel Castro?
Now, I'm a little confused, Steve, because I had heard of the death of Fidel Castro, but the one I had heard about was the one who had made everybody in his country literate, has 100% literacy, and also revolutionized healthcare, which was run by the government, so that everybody gets free healthcare, and also has provided free housing to everybody in Cuba. And so, was there another Fidel Castro that also passed away?
Well, let's see. We've got this one who made medicine free, except there's no medicine, who made sure everybody could read as long as it was Castro-approved propaganda, and who was free to live in the government-supplied shanty town of their choice.
Yeah,
Well
it's
said.
interesting because, they make it sound like he took literacy from 0 to 100 during his tenure, when it was actually like 80%. He took it from 80% up to close to 100%. So, he got that last 15 to 20% of people able to read, like you said, so that they could read Grandma, which was the name of the major news agency in Cuba, which was named after the decrepit yacht that Fidel Castro took in the late 1950s to mount his attack on his former homeland. And the fact that when you go to a doctor in Cuba, you may have to bring your own iodine because supplies are limited. And many of the best doctors actually were shipped out of the country because he essentially sold them. They were kind of wage slaves, and he sold them to Hugo Chavez and others. So, people were joking, literally hanging banners in their windows that said, do I have to go to Venezuela to get treatment for my headache? Yeah, so the kind of stuff that you hear from the Michael Moores of the world and the other, the Pierre Trudeaus who are supporting the former regime, and even the sadness of hearing the President of the United States, a Democrat, a guy from John F. Kennedy's party, who doesn't have the moral clarity to be able to call Fidel Castro what he was, and then to call for the downfall of his brother, who you accurately pointed out is the current dictator. It is pathetic.
Yeah, and you know what, Scott? This is not JFK's Democrat Party anymore. It's a long time gone. All right, folks, it's my sad duty to say sayonara to Barack Obama. When I say sad duty, what I really mean is only this headphone cable back here is keeping me from getting up out of this chair and doing a happy dance like Snoopy jacked up on ecstasy and Red Bull. As Obama prepares to leave office, and please try to hold back your tears, he must look back, and if he's being honest with himself, wonder why he even bothered. You look at his policies, his legacy. His deal with Iran didn't derail that country's illegal nuclear ambitions or scale back its support for international terrorism, but Obama did enrich mullahs by about $140 billion. His fecklessness gave rise to ISIS and the ruination of Iraq. He and his first Secretary of State, what's her name, in Wisconsin, destroyed Libya in an illegal war and helped set off a flood of refugees to Europe. His vanishing red line in Syria eliminated America's hard-won position in the Middle East and invited the Russians back in. His meaningless pivot to Asia weakened Europe and emboldened China. He lost the Philippines. Where are those damn islands? Here at home, he's the author of a $1 trillion stimulus which failed to stimulate. He signed the Dodd-Frank Act, which sanctified the unholy marriage between Washington and Wall Street. His so-called economic recovery cost $10 billion borrowed dollars, yet increased long-term unemployment and left wages stagnating. His failed health coverage law is just months away from being completely undone by the incoming Trump administration, and Obama's party leadership saw the virtual destruction of the Democratic Party everywhere outside of its coastal and urban enclaves, with the loss of about 1,000 Democratic office holders, if you can believe that. And yet, Obama leaves office with a 56% personal approval rating, right up there with Ronald Reagan, and he's the man who reinvigorated the American economy and won the Cold War. Bill, why can't America quit Barack Obama?
What's that book called? Mass Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds, something like that. It's very close to that, yeah. Well, obviously, Steve, Barack Obama and Castro do have a number of things in common. When you were doing Castro's list, I wasn't sure who you were talking about till you got the end there. But they come to power out of a sense of romance. And that's really the only word for it. They seem to be larger than life figures. And of course, they're these monolithic figures, and they're rebels, and they fight against, the establishment, which is dad and mom, who make me do things. And they appear to be like the bad boys on the motorcycles. And bad boy on a motorcycle can only kill 2 or 3 people with a switchblade. Fidel Castro managed to kill tens of thousands, and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton started a war that's killed 450,000 in Syria. Another one of those grim milestones that no one's reporting these days. So you have to understand comes down to one thing, Steve. It's painful to say this, but it seems to be true. The left actually adores tyrants and dictators as long as they're left-wing tyrants and dictators. Yeah. They love it. And they love it because they believe in government power. They believe in power and power for its own sake, and Fidel Castro represents power in the same way that they make deals with these Islamicists, because they respect power. They respect people that act while most of them are cowering in their safe spaces. It's a great day for freedom. It's a great week and a year for freedom, all of that. But, I've flown to Cuba. I've been there twice at Guantanamo Bay. And then when you're at 40,000 feet above the Straits of Florida, and you look down and you say, 90 miles of water, it's not that much. When you see 90 miles of water and you look at some of the contraptions that people have gotten into to get away from this free healthcare and universal literacy, and the number of people that didn't make it, there's no question to me about who's the bad guys here, and I hope he's used to warm climates, so presumably he'll be comfortable there.
Oh, we can only hope. Boy, do I wish him ill. Folks, I paired up Fidel and Barack for a very good reason. Both were left-wing zealots who claimed to have noble ambitions. That's that romance Bill was talking about, but who left having made everything worse. Castro, of course, succeeded where most really ambitious leftists fail, and that is in giving himself life and death power over an entire nation. America's blessing is the genius of our constitutional government, the Charter of Liberty, as Scott calls it. Obama and his short-lived permanent Democratic majority were able to damage our Constitution and decrease our liberties, but the Constitution kept his phone and his pen in check those last 6 years, and now the peaceful handover of power, something Americans have been doing for an unparalleled 200 years, will result in the undoing of the rest of Obama's legacy. If only our friends in Cuba could be so lucky as to have suffered under an ultimately meaningless footnote like Barack Obama. And that is The Right Angle on our two outgoing Commandantes, brought to you by the paying members of BillWhittle.com. Thanks to them for their support, and thanks to you for your time. We'll see you again.